The world's two biggest economies, China and the United States, are locked in an economic standoff that's shaking global markets, raising prices, and fueling political tensions. But this isn't just a fight about dollars and cents, it's a battle of power, pride, and policy. Tariffs have become the weapon of choice. Billions of dollars in goods are being taxed. Businesses are struggling. Consumers are feeling the pinch. And yet, neither side is blinking. Why are these two giants at each other's throats? Is it just about trade? Or is something much deeper brewing beneath the surface? In this video, we dive into the 5 key reasons behind the China-US tariff war, and trust me, it's more than just economics. From intellectual property to political games and global dominance, you'll see how complex and dangerous this standoff really is. So let's break it down, one factor at a time, because to understand the future of our global economy, you need to understand this conflict first. Once upon a time, the United States and China embarked on a journey of economic partnership that promised prosperity for both nations. When China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, hopes ran high as trade between the two nations surged. American consumers enjoyed cheaper goods while U.S. corporations reaped profits from expanded markets. But behind this apparent success lay growing shadows of imbalance and tension. The U.S. began to notice that its imports from China far outweighed its exports, creating a ballooning trade deficit. This imbalance wasn't just numbers on paper, it translated into lost jobs for millions of Americans as domestic industries struggled to compete with China's state-subsidized production and low labor costs. The Chinese government's strategic support for industries through subsidies and currency manipulation further tilted the playing field, making Chinese goods cheaper abroad while U.S. products became less competitive. As the years passed, another concern emerged: technology theft. Many American companies accused China of forcing them to share their innovations or outright stealing intellectual property. National security fears grew as Chinese investments in critical sectors heightened suspicions of ulterior motives. The U.S. responded with tariffs and trade restrictions, first under President Trump and then continued by President Biden. These measures aimed to curb the deficit and counter China's economic practices, but they also hurt American businesses and consumers through higher costs and disrupted markets. Despite these efforts, the trade imbalance persisted, symbolizing deeper challenges in the U.S.-China relationship. Today, this economic rivalry is not just about trade figures, it's a battle over global influence, fairness, and security. The story continues, with both nations navigating a complex web of cooperation and competition that shapes their destinies. The second reason is intellectual property theft. Intellectual property theft has been a pivotal factor in fueling the tariff war between the U.S. and China. For years, China has been accused of employing tactics like forced technology transfers, cyber theft, and unfair licensing practices to gain access to U.S. innovations. These practices reportedly cost the U.S. economy between $225 billion and $600 billion annually, undermining American industries and national security. In response, the U.S., under President Trump, imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, citing IP theft as a primary justification. These tariffs aimed to pressure China into reforming its trade practices and strengthening protections for foreign intellectual property. However, China retaliated with its own tariffs, escalating tensions into a full-blown trade war. The dispute remains unresolved, with both nations locked in negotiations over technology transfer policies and cyber intrusions. The issue highlights deeper economic and geopolitical rivalries between the two powers. The third reason is larger economic and strategic rivalry between the two nations. The story of the U.S.-China tariff conflict is part of a much larger saga, a tale of two superpowers locked in a fierce rivalry over economic dominance, technological leadership, and global influence. Once allies in trade, the relationship began to sour as the United States grew wary of China's economic practices. China's state-backed industries, subsidies, and intellectual property tactics were seen as unfair advantages that threatened U.S. industries. But this was not just about trade, it was about the future. China's ambitions to dominate high-tech sectors like artificial intelligence and 5G represented a direct challenge to America's global leadership. The tariff war became one chapter in this broader competition. The U.S. imposed tariffs on Chinese goods not just to address trade imbalances, but to curb China's rise as a technological powerhouse. China retaliated, escalating tensions. Beneath these actions lay deeper concerns. The U.S. feared losing its edge in innovation, while China sought to reduce reliance on foreign markets through its dual circulation strategy. This economic duel also reflected a clash of ideologies. The U.S. championed free markets and democratic values, while China's state-controlled model posed an alternative vision for global governance. Both nations saw their rivalry as shaping the 21st century world order. Yet, amidst this competition, a paradox emerged. Their economies remained deeply intertwined. Trade volumes persisted, and cooperation on issues like climate change and financial stability hinted at mutual dependence. The rivalry thus became a delicate balancing act, one where both nations sought to outmaneuver each other without destabilizing the global economy. As the story unfolds, the tariff conflict is but one thread in a complex tapestry of economic, technological, and strategic competition that continues to shape the destinies of these two giants and the world they influence. The fourth reason is domestic political pressures. Both the U.S. and China have significantly influenced their tough stances on tariffs, turning the trade conflict into a reflection of internal priorities and public sentiment. In the United States, tariffs serve as a political tool to address voter concerns about job losses, deindustrialization, and economic inequality. Politicians from both parties have used tough rhetoric on China to appeal to working-class voters, particularly in manufacturing-heavy regions. For instance, President Biden's tariff increases on strategic sectors like steel, semiconductors, and electric vehicles are framed as efforts to protect American workers and bolster supply chain resilience, aligning with his broader Investing in America agenda. Similarly, former President Trump initiated the trade war to fulfill campaign promises of revitalizing U.S. manufacturing and addressing intellectual property theft. These measures resonate with voters who feel left behind by globalization, especially during election cycles. In China, maintaining a strong stance against U.S. tariffs is equally driven by domestic politics. The Chinese government seeks to project strength to its citizens, portraying itself as capable of resisting foreign pressure. Retaliatory tariffs and efforts to reduce reliance on U.S. markets align with China's long-term strategy of economic self-reliance and technological independence. This approach helps the Chinese Communist Party reinforce its legitimacy by emphasizing national resilience in the face of external challenges. Thus, for both nations, tariffs are not just economic tools, but also political symbols, designed to rally domestic support while addressing broader strategic goals. The number 5 reason is failed negotiations between U.S. and China. In the halls of power in Washington and Beijing, negotiators once gathered with grand promises of bridging divides. The U.S. arrived armed with spreadsheets and demands. Reform your economy, they urged. Stop subsidizing state champions. End forced tech transfers. To American officials, these weren't mere requests, they were non-negotiables to level a playing field tilted by China's rise. But across the table, China's envoys bristled. Their economy, built on state-led growth and strategic self-reliance, couldn't abandon the very model that lifted 800 million from poverty. This is our path, they countered, eyes fixed on initiatives like Made in China 2025, a blueprint to dominate AI, robotics, and green tech. Compromising meant surrendering sovereignty, a red line etched in decades of pride. The two sides inked deals anyway. The Phase 1 agreement of 2020 was hailed as a truce. China vowed to buy $200 billion in American goods, from soybeans to natural gas. But behind the champagne toasts, cracks emerged. The U.S. soon accused China of falling short on purchases while Beijing chafed at America First tariffs still strangling its exports. The pact became a bandage on a bullet wound, ignoring the rot beneath: intellectual property theft, cyber espionage, and China's walled markets. Trust frayed like old rope. American negotiators whispered of China's bad faith, last-minute rewrites of agreed text, vague promises replaced by loopholes. Chinese officials scoffed at U.S. hypocrisy, noting America's own farm subsidies and refusal to lift bans on Huawei. Each side saw the other as a chess master playing for dominance, not partnership. Domestic audiences cheered the stalemate. In Ohio and Michigan, politicians won votes by vowing to get tough on China, while Beijing's state media spun resistance as a patriotic defense against Western containment. Compromise became political suicide. Today, the negotiating tables gather dust. The tariff war simmers, a symptom of a deeper clash, two empires wrestling over who writes the rules of the 21st century. And so the story continues, not with handshakes, but with glares across a widening divide.